such interesting times. Like working with ketamine now, feel like, okay, we're having a chance to try some things out before we get MDMA, psilocybin, and who knows what else. There's a lot to be concerned about. And just the people I've worked with, they're in an IV clinic and it's like, oh, next person, you can't walk yet, we'll help you get out and take you to your Uber, right? What kind of care is that? And then people's like, oh, I tried ketamine, it didn't work, or it was even disturbing. I mean, ketamine can be really, really weird. And people are, but it's legal and it's a medical thing, so people are just being given this experience without necessarily, maybe they'll say, well, you should get some counseling. But it's not really a system of care and relationship when people are just put in a chair for the medical thing and now, that's how much you get for your money.
Welcome to Modern Enlightenment, a sanctuary for your soul, where we'll go on a path of personal and spiritual development. I'm Austin Mao.
And I'm Chuchu Wang. We are your companions on this journey of self-discovery and spiritual connection.
Join us as we delve into the fusion of modern psychotherapy, neuroscience, psychospirituality, and shamanic plant sacrament ceremonies, exploring the transformative potential of psychedelics for the mind, body, and spirit.
Our mission is to guide you to a place of profound awareness where emotions can be felt.
Together, let's illuminate the way to a brighter, more enlightened existence.
Modern Enlightenment, where your journey to inner peace begins. Hi everyone. Today we're inviting our beloved Kate Hawke to be our guest on Modern Enlightenment podcast. I met Kate in the mud of the Burning Man last year when she was recording a movie with Vic Dublin. Since then, we have been keeping in touch and discovering more and more of this hidden gem who has been a MAPS member since the 1980s, who has been putting her whole life into service and being a trauma specialist for more than 30 years. And she's being served as the president of Arizona Mental Health Counseling and Arizona Counseling Association. And she's also the founder of Energy Psychology Conference, who has been running for 25 years. And the reason we clicked immediately, she also just completed one of our ceremonial journey. And the reason we're all the explorer on this path of consciousness. And she has been dedicating her life since her teenager to explore all these modalities and trying to find out what works the best. Just like what are we doing here? Thank you, Kate.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'd like to just start by acknowledging what a pleasure it is to sit with you here. We shared so much already in the past few days. It just feels an honor to have an elder here with us too.
Also someone who has dedicated her whole life to stick out on all the modalities. And just we have so much to learn and share together.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at my 70th birthday here in a few weeks. And so that word elder, that started hearing that a while back. And I would look around like, who's that? Where are the old people? Right? And now, like that generation, there's a few of them still around from, my parents have passed on and most people of that age are gone. And so somebody needs to be the elders. And, it helps to have friends like Rick. Rick just celebrated his 70th birthday recently. It helps to have good company as we get older and really stop making excuses for wanting somebody else to be, the leaders and the elders. That, it's time for us who are still alive and still really alive, and still on the adventure, to be here and speak up and be here for younger people. As you've got lots of energy, you've got lots of your own experience, but there is something about perspective of, getting to be a certain age, having lived all those years and all that life. So we can either feel like it's a load to carry and we're tired of it, or, harvest the love, harvest the lessons, be grateful that we're alive now, and also being aware that life doesn't last forever. Even if we get to be 100, it can go pretty quickly. It's an interesting time of life.
That word presents so much like juice, I think, because you were friends with Rick very early on. And so right in the beginning of this movement towards legalization of psychedelics, you were right at the forefront. And then now, as we are, anticipating legalization of MDMA, of psilocybin, federally and the legalization in Colorado, it just seems such a poignant time to bring forth this notion of an elder, because we need it. The world is really accelerating its pace towards consciousness.
And what I really love and respect and appreciate of you and people like Rick, it's you guys embodied the wisdom, but also kept the childlike wonder and excitement and curiosity. And I think that's the true embodiment and the value and the result of the work you've been doing your whole life to also embody that, keep that.
We've been working on it. And part of what we learned is like the more you know you don't know. That word enlightenment, when I was 17, 18, I had my copy of Be Here Now, and people were talking about enlightenment. I was in the suburbs of Chicago, and it seemed like, okay, I'm going to take my Be Here Now, I'm going to move to a mountaintop in Idaho and maybe meditate for 6 months, get enlightened, live happily ever after. What did we know? All I knew was I was going to get away from my parents' world in the suburbs. And yeah, I moved to Idaho and I fussed with my boyfriend and I went back to school. And here we are all these years later. Rick has had a very direct, once he got in the groove, a direct path. When we met, we were both 20. He said he wanted to be a psychedelic psychotherapist. We laughed at him. What is that? It doesn't exist. And, he spent his 20s building houses, but then once he really got to work, he stayed on track with that mission. I've done a lot of different things, really was starting out with spiritual seeking. Well, I started out with 15 years thinking I was going to be a physicist, and then realizing the interesting part of physics was where we were in the picture. Back then they didn't really have consciousness studies, or I would have gone to consciousness studies. But, I need to know about us, so I guess that's psychology. Psychology was either like rat studies or perception or these very fuzzy ideas, like, Jungian psychology and Freud and Jung and Gestalt and all these different things that were ideas, but I was like, where's the science? This isn't like physics. I want to know where's the answer? Where's the right answer? Where's the piece of knowledge that can build on the other pieces? And it wasn't like that. And so, it's been a long, strange trip. In the middle, there were times where I did psychedelics in my younger years, and then I pretty much quit for decades. It was very rare. And then, again, thanks to Rick, MDMA came around and it was legal at the time. So I had some experiences with that. Wow, here we are, which is a very exciting time, a very challenging time. Being here at Ceremonia, this is like, wow, right in the middle of the United States, here in Denver, it's legal. We had a mushroom ceremony. It was beautiful. The last time I went to a mushroom ceremony, I went to the Netherlands. That was where it was legal and available. So this is an amazing opportunity. And also, as a trauma therapist, I see a lot of people who've had a lot of experience, including traumatic experiences with psychedelics. Mm-hmm. There's people who just come back wounded, people who come back, I won't say enlightened, but, with growth experiences for sure. And there's some people who come back confused or feeling harmed. So part of being an elder is thinking about safety for real, not like, just say no to drugs, bullshit safety that's not safe, that actually has led to ignorance and unsafe practices and illegal substances, which are dangerous, but actual safety because people are going to explore and people need to explore, right? And psychedelics are part of that. And it's like the pendulum swinging from, just say no to drugs, they'll make holes in your brain, to everybody should take mushrooms and that's going to solve our problem. It's not either of those.
Something that I'm seeing is in this arc of time since you first started your path of discovery to now. I imagine that I've heard you say you've trained thousands of therapists. You've done, been on both ends of the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, both as a facilitator and as a participant. And I'm just curious, in this span of time, what have you learned works? If you could go back in time and say to 20-year-old Kate, hey, this is what you should really start exploring.
Yeah, for all that I didn't know back then, I did have a good sense of some things. Like I knew that psychedelics were valuable, and I knew it wasn't good to do them all the time or do them in random situations. There were the years where I stopped doing any kind of drugs. I didn't drink coffee or use alcohol even, because I was involved in certain techniques. And there were some techniques that were very reliable, that if you had the conditions and somebody who was trained and these very specific procedures, you could get a result in a short amount of time. I love that. That, like, my geek side was just like, all right, there's a technology here, there's science. And without mentioning names of any cults, some of these tended to be, all right, here's this great thing. You want it? Now you got to buy this whole thing. Join our group and we'll tell you how to live. And some of it got really sad and ugly and twisted, right? Which didn't mean that these techniques didn't work. They actually did. People don't join cults like, yeah, take my money and make me crazy. But some of this stuff was all, kind of glommed together with personalities and, what do you say? Ego, human stuff, right? So psychedelics now could be seen as this, like, oh, you like this? It works. Now buy our whole trip. And there can be variations on that. That's one of the things I've seen. Is just like people, you can take something really good and then put a twist in it. And so what I appreciate is people who are saying, okay, it's not just let's join this club with this technique or this one. Let's learn everything that's out there. Nobody knows everything that's out there, but let's, study all kinds of interesting things as we're guided to do that, and look at the principles behind them, look at what can fit together, and putting together methods, medicines, and above all, relationships, community, a safe place, a genuine caring. Yeah, there's businesses involved. And that's a balance in our world. Like, people just having to run a business. How can you do that with a real heart and a real dedication to service? I do see that here. I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you so much. What I'm hearing is there's so many modalities, so many methods, right, that is available. And there's often a reliance on the provider and the receiver. And when that mixed with so much human's ego and personal gain and loss, these powerful modalities, and including psychedelics, it's important is to recognize the power and also to really look closely who is holding that power and what orientation and intention that person has with holding this power. And I'm hearing is those modalities and technologies are great. That is what is really precious in someone who are familiar with the modalities, but also have a pure heart of service and embodying genuine love and care. And that's what you discover work.
Yeah, the whole variety of techniques can work. In the 90s, I was doing EMDR. I did some NLPs, energy psychology, the tapping emotional freedom technique that's still around. I did a number of different techniques. They all worked really well for me. And I was grateful that my training had been, first of all, just to be present and stay out of the way and give a person enough, whatever the guidance, whether it was, eye movements or just a question to help them direct their attention, and have lots of space to listen and support people in coming to their own answers. So it was always unlike therapies, like I'm the expert, I'm going to get you to dispute your irrational beliefs and straighten you out. This was always just, okay, together we're going to set up the conditions where you're going to look at things for yourself. I know when maybe we need another question or shifting something, but otherwise there's a lot of space as you explore, come to your own realizations, then I'll just be a witness to that. And that's been, that's how we're working in psychedelics also. Like in the MAPS training, I think the hardest thing training psychedelic therapists is like stay out of the way. We even have that acronym, why am I speaking? Let's see. Why am I talking? Wait. Yes. Wait. Why am I talking? Just to remind ourselves. And there are times to talk, but not that much. I read a book recently that was more making a case for being a therapist and actually doing it face-to-face over Zoom and having people on MDMA, but, the therapist is being a therapist, being more directive. I'd like to see how that actually works. I think there's a place for being or guiding things, But I also have seen like it works very well with psychedelics. I mean, I work with ketamine assisted therapy. You can do things to set up the conditions, but once people are in that psychedelic space, that we have the inner healing intelligence, we can really trust things to unfold. And more often, especially if the therapist thinks they're the expert, they're more likely to get in the way or, interject something that people are used to seeing therapists as the expert, some people. And if we play into that, I don't think it serves people to, find their own answers.
It seems like this growing field and interest in psychedelic-assisted therapy and ceremony is really presenting a question to what the pathway of consciousness is. Or is it this if this then that structure where you can read it in a book and then counsel somebody to do it? Or is it something deeper, right? And I heard you say words like presence and community, inner healing intelligence, right? The word that I'll use to describe some of what I heard you say is integrity too, right? And I'm curious, like, you've done all the trainings. You train people too, right? You have the degrees, you founded conferences, etc. What are those core things that can't be read in a book that you feel are critical, that now that maybe you didn't know before, and pairing with working with psychedelics or other energy work that you...
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if it was all, you just had to read the books. It's all in the books. And when you talk about modern enlightenment as compared to how things were in the past, where you had to find a teacher, maybe you had to find a guru, maybe there wasn't anybody, to have guidance, or you had a religion that said you had to go through the priest to God. Now, all the information's available. I mean, maybe there's some secrets out there, but there's so much information, techniques, and you can watch gurus online. Obviously, we don't have this massively enlightened world right now. So what makes a difference? That was like going back to my 18-year-old self, like it's going to be me, God, maybe Ram Dass in his book anyway. But, it's going to be like this inner journey to enlightenment, like it's always up and out there, and somehow this thing is going to happen. That thing has happened. For me. I mean, that's happened many times with and without psychedelics, more often actually without psychedelics, with other practices, with chanting, breathing, Sufi practices, and just grace. Like those moments of perfection of the universe, blasts of white light, roaring voices like thunder, messages from God by that name. These things have happened. Okay, now what? Like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, the laundry. All those things are true. It's like, okay, it's not a place to get to. I haven't forgotten what that's like. And even in this moment, I can say, well, is the perfection of the universe right here in all of its everything, every little thing, including my own wobbly feelings or all of our human awkwardness? The fact that there is this kind of expanded state or expanded states of awareness doesn't make the everyday moments less precious. And some of those simple, your question, what's important? It's like presence, caring presence. You can call it love. Words like love and God have been abused, and sometimes people have trauma connected with those. But really, we do come back to love heals, love in action. And I found that here. I found that like the genuinely come as you are, and with all of our judgments on ourselves. I saw that with other people in the group, even people who felt like they'd never been loved and accepted in their life. And it was hard to believe that they were being loved and accepted. Sometimes maybe somebody else accepts us and we don't accept ourselves, and it's kind of an awkward feeling, but it's still like you were just present the whole time, loving people, accepting people where they are, and also challenging everyone to grow. Inviting people, not demanding, but inviting people to take the next step, encouraging us, and putting together a program that had different parts, and one thing led to another. So I see that. It's like, it's not just about mushrooms, right? If it was that easy, like read a book and eat some mushrooms. And sometimes people make it sound like that, right? If we just all had mushrooms. I've had a rough time on mushrooms. I love mushrooms. We picked mushrooms back in Florida in the 70s, and we didn't know they were legal. It was probably more fun thinking they weren't. But so much of this work has to do with intention. Just a couple of days ago, my intention was to let go of things that were no longer needed. Some of these things sound so nice. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Just let go. And where I found myself was in a place where I felt like I had 1% on the battery before being totally dead. Like looking at my life being that drained. I've been through times before where I felt wiped out or pushed to the edge in some ways. I wasn't worried, but I was like thoroughly miserable. It wasn't just theoretical. It was just actually being there and being in that, having the space to just be in that space. And also then having the connection. You came and just very gently said, like, how you doing? And we connected. And I felt like it was like that feeling of, you think the fire is out, and then there's a tiny little ember in there. And if you breathe on the ember, right, you don't want to blow it out, but you just like breathe on it a little bit. And that feels like, it's like genuine love and care. It's not really trying, it's being present, right? And that, to me, that felt like, first it was sort of like, there's a little bit of something, I'm not sure I like it. But then, it was just like coming back to life. And coming back to life in a community. I think that's what we missed. I know, like, going way back, we were all trying to do it on our own. It was like, take drugs, see God, meditate on a mountain. There's communities, but usually there's a whole lot of drama, especially like all of us young people in our 20s. Yeah, we're going to do things better than our parents. So the perspective, I have a lot of compassion for all the 20-year-olds. Please do things better than your parents. And oh my God, hormones, and not to mention social media and, the soup we live in. Where do we find just simple truth and safety? And then we can have tools, techniques, medicines, maybe traditions from other places, if it fits, not to like copy or appropriate. But we do have all of these different things. It's like a buffet. But if you just you don't want to just eat the whole thing, or you're going to be sick. How do you choose? People like you and like myself, we've been out there experiencing things for ourselves, learning things. How do we bring all of that back and orchestrate an experience so people can come in, especially people in a group like this, coming from all different places, and become a group, a little family in a short time, and go through an experience together. It's a delicate and beautiful and powerful process.
Thank you. Would you share your own journey and the moment we spent together? I will never forget. It means a lot to me. There's a question like, you do this work, you know all the tools, yet you're still struggling. And to see someone like you who has spent your whole life and you learning more tools, much more tools than I do with all the years you had, and yet you still find yourself on the ground. And that just gives me so much more permission, for myself, and also encourage me to even be more vulnerable with my own experience, because that's what is true and authentic for everyone. Yeah, people maybe like one generation, there is like one people like around us who would make there and stay there. For the rest of us, enlightenment is every moment. There's a process of like getting there and then forgetting, and then you said there's a lot of fun and value in those remembering.
Yeah, the remember, forget. And it's like, aren't you permanently enlightened yet? What good is all this stuff if you're just like literally on the ground, just hoping it's going to be over? And, and at the same time where I was just like, okay, I could just like knock myself out with a sleeping pill. And no, I've never done that. So I think, no, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be enlightened. Good heavens, don't go around pretending we're enlightened. Just keep going. Just like hang in there. And I needed to learn to get help in lots of ways, to ask for help. And including, just like people half my age, because we can all help each other. We can all help each other.
And I'm sensing Austin asked the question twice, like what had worked for you. And I imagine Austin's looking for like a terminology like IFS and things we geeked out on. And I think from you, from the older perspective, from expert in this field for so many years, and there's many tools and information on the internet. Now, what really works is a loving presence that is rooted in truth, integrity, in all of the things. And like before we share what's powerful, it's really important to look who is pulling that power, the intention we all carry, no matter in seeking healing and transformation or providing services.
And I actually like that question of like, well, what works? Because I was looking for that, like, where are the tools that work? Where are the techniques that work? And I found some. I found a bunch of them. Like all the ones I mentioned, like the tapping, I just tried it on the street with the first person. And she went from like being hysterical, talking in this squeaky voice, waving her hands. And just like, well, would you be willing to tap on that? She's like, okay. And then I said, 0 to 10, how disturbing is that? She's like, disturbing? Like, why would that be upset, right? Why would I be upset about that? Right? Fortunately, her brother was right there. He was laughing because she'd been very worked up about it. And we did this tapping thing. She's like, oh, I guess I was upset. Why would I be upset about that? Right? And that led to the energy psychology conferences where I just thought, wow, everybody needs to know this stuff. If everybody knows these trauma methods, this goes back, 30 years now, if everybody knew these methods, we'd heal trauma, we'd all be happier, we'd have heaven on earth. And those are all good. I mean, there's tens of millions of people doing, EFT and tapping. There's a Tapping World Summit that starts next week, right? Good stuff. I would recommend that to everybody. And we haven't all been healed and enlightened and free of our trauma yet.
So I would like to reframe the question in a way of like, there are many tools that are proven working, but it's hard to identify, what is an organization or individual that can actually providing that loving presence and true compassion that rooted in truth and aligned with integrity. Like if someone, the tools are not important, but someone who really needs it, like what are they looking for?
A lot of people are looking for something. Especially since Michael Pollan's book came out a number of years ago, it's probably 7 years now, I started getting a lot of calls, specifically people looking for a mushroom sitter. I could tell, like I listened to him for a minute and was like, so you read Michael Pollan's book and you think mushrooms are going to be, sometimes it was for themselves, sometimes it's like, my 70-year-old dad has lost his sparkle. I think he needs mushrooms. And I know some people who I've seen them after they've gone and they've found somebody out there sometimes charging a lot of money. I mean, I know if like somebody I work with, he paid $4,000 for some guy 1,000 miles away, and he had a mushroom experience. He was given a bunch of mushrooms. He was having a hard time. He said he didn't feel safe, and he was told like, well, you are safe. Here, have some more mushrooms. And it was a trauma, So it's sad. I feel apologetic to the mushrooms. I love all kinds of mushrooms. And like people, here we take something beautiful and powerful like mushrooms and almost weaponize it in some cases. That's a strong word, but just like, okay, it's going to be, I have the mushrooms and I'm going to give the mushrooms to you and it's like, stop your problems. Just that it's kind of the same paradigm as, oh, here, take these pills so you won't feel. Or I'm the doctor, I'm the expert, take these, take this prescription next. And there doesn't have to be a relationship there. And there's so many systems where people feel that. Are they just going through the system, even if they have a counselor for an hour who listens to them or does whatever, maybe doing the best they can do, they're still just running through a system. And it's like, well, what will your insurance pay for? How many sessions do you get? Here's up next, we stirred this thing up, but now we hold on to that for next week. I've never worked with that with trauma work. I know some work settings, but most work settings require that kind of run people through on the schedule. And I've always worked with, once we open something up, we keep going until we get to a point of resolution as far as we can get. And sometimes it's amazing, like one deep session will do a lot more, even without medicines. Will do a lot more than years of therapy.
I'm hearing in this is like mushrooms or psychedelics is not a panacea. It's not a solution in and of itself. And there's a spectrum of providers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been in this field for some time, and I can't tell you how often someone has a life-changing experience with the psychedelic. I mean, next week they're saying, okay, I'm going to start serving mushrooms, or I'm going to start serving, ayahuasca or something like that. I'm sure you've seen that dozens, hundreds of times. There's also the really well-trained individuals, psychotherapists that are credentialed and have been practicing for many years. But the working with psychedelics presents a very different paradigm that I think you're pointing to, right? It's like, it's not just about the techniques, right? The techniques are a layer on top of something that is fundamental, that we're all trying to orient towards. And that's, our self-empowerment, that's love, that's presence, that's connection, etc. And it seems like what you're saying is that mushrooms are great and all, that the techniques are great and all, but what you really need is to have an environment conducive to safety, right? That affords you the space for you to discover that self-empowerment, that presence, that connection in yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we've got a great opportunity now that psychedelics are becoming legal. In the research, we just had to, like MDMA, does the MDMA make a difference? It's not MDMA plus ideal therapy, right? Sometimes little IFS would sneak in there because people would start talking about parts, but it wasn't really IFS therapy, right? Now, when MDMA should be becoming legal, mushrooms are legal here, ayahuasca at some places, we can really start looking at just what you're doing is how do we create a whole experience with one or more psychedelic experiences, but then all of these other tools and group experiences that can serve as preparation. It can give people tools to use possibly during this psychedelic experience, if it's something kind of subtle and not distracting, but also, of course, in life afterwards. How do we have integration? How do we use the relationships that were developed? Because, we're traumatized in relationship, we heal in relationship. That's really powerful. Lived on and around the Navajo Nation since the 70s, and it's all about relationships. My friend Thomas Walker says, my relations are my medicine. Here, there's relationships, there's medicine, there's all these methods, and then there's all of that works with each of us, each person having their opportunity, not obligation, but their invitation to keep going deeper and being supported. All that works together.
Yeah. When you say the word relationship, we use another word as connection. And there's a difference. There are so many different relationships. I was talking with Randy, and I said, worked with addictions, that there's a saying says the opposite of addiction is not sober, is connection.
Yes.
He's like, don't take that too seriously, because all the drug addicts, they do drugs together. There's a relationship, there's a connection. How come, that's not opposite? I was like, Randy, that I think that connection, most of our human connections are parts to parts. Our anger parts attract anger parts. Our lonely parts attracts your lonely parts. Those are relationships, but they're not authentic connection that come from self. And there's so many relationships are a trait, a trait, and getting something out of this. Either loves, a lot of name in love is I love you, so I can feel loved. The connection, the relationship that really works in healing community. I go to Kirtan, and Kirtan is a community, and it's a community who are all devoted to truth, to spirituality. But that level of connection doesn't satisfy me in a way, because we are connected in a way, even in self-energy, but there's also lacking of depth, vulnerability, and, the safety created from when we are in the parts that we don't love ourselves, hold with compassion and love. And I think that's the relationship with the community, that kind of level of quality and authenticity is what we are talking about, the relationship, not just that simple word of relationship, how we understand, normal life.
Yeah, that's interesting. That idea of part of life, but looking at addictions specifically about parts relating to parts. If that's all that people know and that's all they have, they're not going to want to give that up, right? I mean, that's like the part-to-part connection is better than nothing. And some people don't know what else is possible. And so it is part of healing addiction specifically. Well, and in the trauma work without medicines and in the work with medicines, I find that at that point of resolution, at that point of completeness, people sometimes struggle to find the words because it's a feeling that they're trying to say. But if they come out with something, it's something like, I'm me, right? Which sounds funny, and they never say there's anything wrong with them at that point. It's like, I'm me. And that's the best, right? And that's like the real self. And some people haven't felt it before.
Right.
Like I see that, like, what's this weird feeling? Oh, it's me, I'm me. If we can keep coming home to ourselves and through relationships and connection, stay connected, each of us, like not demanding, come on, be yourself. That can be a whole other trip, but being ourselves the best we can in that moment and inviting each other and beholding each other. It's just like this uplifting life. We can lift ourselves up together. We can bring ourselves down together. But, we know how to do it, let's choose to keep lifting ourselves up.
A word comes to mind for me is reference experience, right? And we just had somebody in our group that shared that she doesn't have a memory of feeling loved by her parents, right? And we've had many people that haven't had a memory of being held, and really cared for.
Yeah.
And then experiencing it here, it felt not normal, right?
Right, yeah.
And tears felt not normal.
Yeah.
Right? I have great compassion for that experience. And there's also a part of me that feels sad. We have people growing up in an environment that doesn't have that reference experience. And what feels important is that community, connection, like a space like this can offer that reference to say, oh, that actually feels good inside of me to feel unconditionally loved. And it feels natural. And with that, there's a compass to point to, like in the psychedelic experience, like, I now know what really being I am me, what that feels like. And then I can just orient myself to that direction.
Which also brings up that idea that sometimes we forget, but I cannot forget that I've forgotten anymore. Even when I'm feeling like I'm totally on my last 1% of battery, maybe not even that, I still know I have my lifetime of experiences. I have my inner knowing. I'm not going to go, jump off a cliff. I may just hang in there and tolerate it if I can't figure out what else to do. I may try, maybe some, there's some technique, some energy thing, but there's our natural buoyancy. We keep coming back if we're not struggling and we're not, I think in that case, I asked for it. What do I need to let go? Help me let go of everything. And it's like, there it is. It's actually dead. What's gone is gone. I'm not dead. I'm here. But there was, it's starting to feel like, whoa, 70 years of experience. That's a lot of life. And yes, there have been wonderful times, but there's also just been like disappointments and like things that just didn't work out the way I thought they would. And I don't need to keep carrying that.
Would you be open to like sharing what happened after that? You were in that space of feeling you were battery at 1%.
Yeah, she just very gently showed up. I'd gone off to like with the group, but then I'll just change something. I'll go into another space. And, it's just like, I just wish I could go to sleep. I'll go to sleep sometime, but not now. And she just came in very gently. It's just there. And whatever she said was just like a little bit and gentle, but just invited me to start talking and finding words. And at first, it just felt awkward. But then it really was a lot of like, okay, there's a little juice here, and talking about a couple of things that set a spark. And I felt like I came back to life. I didn't come back to 100%. I came back to 10% and then 20. But then moving back into the group, I just I had this incredible energy. I was up for like another 4 or 5 hours. Where did all that come from? Where I was sure like I was done for, right? Yeah, the energy move. I just ended up with so much energy and so much like I'm alive. And my intention had been, to let go of that which doesn't serve anymore and to make space for love. And then it's like, there's love, there's beauty. And being here with the group, there was just so much love and so much beauty. And then afterwards, I mean, at the end of the ceremony and then the next day and the integration, all of that. Not that there's one right way to do psychedelic work, but the basics, which pretty much everybody says, like preparation, whatever the experience is, integration, how do you do that in a way that, that really makes a difference after we go home in the rest of our lives?
You feel there's so much love just in 3 days. I'm so excited for when you're back for 5 days. We have more time to cultivate that together, and the result is exponential.
Yeah, I hear you. Right now, I've been thinking about going even maybe to Africa for Iboga, either Mexico for Ibogaine or Africa for Iboga, because I wanted a real reset, clearing, clarity. And okay, I haven't wanted to do Iboga. I've heard about it. It's great. I don't have an addiction problem. Nice for those people. But recently it was just I want to do something that is going to make that much of a difference. And, we'll see. This weekend was a weekend and with mushrooms. I think any of these medicines in the right, setting, with support, with community, with intention, preparation, integration, all of that, each medicine does have its own characteristic and its own works in different ways. But all of that, I feel I'm good for the moment. And sure, I'll think about there will be more. There will be more. And right now, I'm just I just want to go live. Yeah, I haven't smiled for a while. People would say, oh, well, you're a happy person. Yeah, but not the kind of smile that, it can't stop, right? It's just life. It's just having room for life. It's not smiling because I could find reasons, but it's just being alive. So as a therapist, there's things that you could call therapy. Sometimes I'm not so thrilled with therapy and my profession. A lot of it is just not up to the job. And then people just end up taking a bunch of pills and trying not to feel, or giving up because they think they tried and it didn't work. I'm working with people back home who were they were firefighters and they were traumatized and PTSD, and they were just told, well, this pill didn't work and this talk therapy didn't work. You're just going to have to live with it. You should just accept it. This is your new normal. I could just cry. I mean, I have cried thinking about that, because then they oh, I'm broken. I used to be this strong guy helping people, and now I am broken and can, have a hard time taking care of myself. And that's not the best we can do. I mean, I believe those therapists thought, well, that's all they see, and it's better for people to accept something than fight it. But no, that's not our new normal. PTSD is not that tough, people, even without psychedelics. And now we have these tools too.
It makes me think of what you talked about beginning. We are just using the same energy, working in the same system that doesn't work. We're using all these new tools. Now we have this new thing that is psychedelic, that is the same mentality, the same consciousness that how we created all this program in our health, mental health field.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, what we aligned together, the healing is the focus. What truly heals is the connection with truth that provides healing, but also beyond healing. That the inner healing intelligence, you shared, so many people go to this new power, new tool called psychedelics. And most people, they're traumatized. They don't even know that is what impact their life, because all of this work is making conscious, unconscious. But imagine this powerful tool can also create more unconscious damage that we don't even know how did that happen. And, MAPS has developed the word inner healing intelligence. And, in other modality can call self with big S, or can call our spirit, our soul. And we mentioned at the very beginning that what's really important for any of this service is to empower every individual who seek for this work, that, you are perfect and loved, and that's why you are here. And all these layers of trauma we experienced in a dysfunction society, those layers covered up from that precious gem that we are. And when we a therapist, a good therapist or good space holder, provider, have basically all have to have this orientation of like, yeah, wait, why are you talking? Like getting out of the way, and also not taking the power away from people, not giving the power to me as a therapist, not giving away the power to this mushroom that is your medicine, but really is reminding everyone that you are the power, you are the source of healing, and try just to create safe space, loving presence, and allow everybody to discover that themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You are the power, people. It's true. Yeah. There's so much we could say. It's such interesting times. Like working with ketamine now, I feel like, okay, we're having a chance to try some things out before we get MDMA, psilocybin, and who knows what else. There's a lot to be concerned about. I mean, just the people I've worked with, they're in an IV clinic and it's like, oh, next person, you can't walk yet. We'll help you get out and take you to your Uber, right? What kind of care is that? And then people's like, oh, I tried ketamine, it didn't work, or it was even disturbing. I mean, ketamine can be really, really weird. And people are, it's legal and it's a medical thing. So people are just being given this experience without necessarily, maybe they'll say, well, you should get some counseling. But it's not really a system of care and relationship when people are just put in a chair for the medical thing. And now, that's how much you get for your money.
When we talk about the ember, like imagine someone like a firefighter being diagnosed and this is your new normal.
Yeah.
Like everybody in this world seeking healing, they want people who can send that ember rather than more for you.
Yeah.
That is so depressing in itself.
Yeah.
Very clearly, you've been around the block. You've had so much experience, learned so many tools, trained so many people, and had so many of your own psychedelic journeys. It's not every day that we can record a podcast in our space with somebody that's just come through our program. And would just love to hear from you, like, throughout all this experience, and then finally, like, answering the invitation to come here. First, like, why did you say yes? And then what were your expectations? What did you experience? And I mean, what are you walking away with?
Yeah. Why did I say yes? Well, partly it was meeting you in the mud at Burning Man and then seeing you at Rick's birthday party and then talking to you and getting a good feeling. But I also have my craft detector here. It's just like, oh, who are these people? Like, oh, they have an Airstream with a sous vide at Burning Man. Like, are they those people? Like that seems okay, but I'm not buying anything here, right? I'm just watching but it seems okay. And when you invited me here, I know a lot of people who are looking for a supported mushroom experience specifically. So that was part of what I was interested in, because people say, well, where can you recommend? And like, I don't know. I mean, I did this thing in the Netherlands, but that's not practical for most people. So, I do want to know, like, who is doing a good job where I can make recommendations for people who are looking for help. And then it was just personal. Like, I'm in a place right now, and again, like 70th birthday, this is my midlife crisis, finally. Didn't really notice that when I was 40, 50, 60, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, wait a minute. We kind of missed the midlife point. So it was a time for me. I was like, okay, my been there, done that. Yeah, I've been there and I've done a lot, and there's always more. So it was good timing for me to just like, okay, take a breath. I'm going to try this out personally. Sometimes it feels like my feet are just walking without me deciding. And it's like, this is the thing that's happening. I'll find out what it is. So there was a certain element of that, but also that you've always been just so gracious. And my craft detector is like, I'm watching, I'm not seeing anything wrong here. And you're so human. I mean, you're just very, especially, good heavens, being a couple, doing this together and not acting like, oh, we just got all our shit handled. That would have set off my craft detector. And there was really all of that. And, this whole life has been navigating to, one step into the unknown and not really knowing why. I mean, I got a brochure for Burning Man in the mail. I didn't know anybody who'd ever been there. It was in the 90s. And I went to Burning Man not knowing anyone who'd been there, ever talking to someone who'd gone to Burning Man. I had a friend in the 90s also. I had a friend who just said, yeah, I went down to the Amazon and I drank this horrible tasting brew and I threw up a lot. I don't remember saying anything else besides that. And part of me is going, that sounds horrible. And part of it is going, I'm going to do that someday. I'm like, this makes no sense. But my life has kind of been like that. And I haven't regretted it. It's like, here we go. I'll find out what it is after we do it. So a lot of it was like that, like, okay, I know these people are for real, and I've heard of Ceremonia, and I actually was thinking about coming over here at the MAPS conference, but there was just so much going on when you were hosting something here. So I just felt like this is the time.
And I imagine you had some expectations coming here, and I mean, what was it like?
I try not to have expectations in terms of, all that mind chatter. It's probably going to be blah, blah, blah. Like, I really didn't know. It was more just a feeling like, this is what's happening, and I'll find out. I mean, it feels okay, and I don't know, and that's the way it is. So, yeah, I don't know. Expectations. It's not like I expected less, really, but how could I have expected everything that there was here? Like, I just couldn't have known that in addition to, just a quality, responsible mushroom experience with beautiful music, the live music and the recorded music and the space. And this is such a dedicated medicine space. It's unique. It's in its own kind of, 70s in the middle of Denver, magical, cold plunge. I expected that, but tried not to think about it too much. It was amazing. It was actually, by the time we were in the mushroom ceremony, I was just very relaxed. I didn't expect to not be nourished, but how could I expect that, the food you prepared with such care and just like perfectly nourished? I just felt very never stuffed or out of balance, but also just completely nourished. I mean, that was perfect. And also just the food as an expression of love. And yeah, what else? I mean, right here in Colorado with a, airport right over there. So
did you expect that we would geek out on so many modalities?
No, I had no idea, because you've done, the things like the spiritual technologies world that not many people know. Like, there were a couple of things just like that technique. I've never seen that anywhere except for the guy I went to Serbia to study with did that. He developed that, and I don't know anybody else who does it. And then like Prisma, and you've woven these things together, giving credit to everybody, and also just bringing things together. It's not just like, this technique is the brand of, like, that's what it's all about. It's all of these things. Not everything fits together either, but you've brought together like all of these things that have some commonalities, rather than, well, this technique might look a little different or this different, or the language is a little different. But what's really going on is like being present with ourselves, experience our feelings, emotions, and sensations. And when we experience it, it just tends to move. All these different ways of being present with ourselves and also noticing what's there that's ready to move. And then the connection, the relationship and connection. Yeah, I don't know how I would have been able to expect that. And even though I've been to other groups, like maybe 3 weeks with ayahuasca or, a week with mushrooms, and the other one, we didn't do nearly as much with actually connecting with the people in the group.
Yeah. Like hearing what you're saying and just flashback how we started is like, we had, it's just like everything you share good about us, it makes even more meaningful, because like a good chef have to eat all the good meals. Like, you not only taste all the good meals and you create wonderful meals for other people, and now like tasting us and giving such beautiful reflection. And I think about we started is like, yeah, we taste all these meals and we want to share what works the best for us, putting together in a way that, make sort of sense, and then build an arc to bring this together. And then through, this is our 20-something journeys now, and through each journey, refining, and also from great teachers and supporters and friends like yourself, like our friend Jerry and Kate are, we would like really geek out and like, okay, how can we do better here? There is some incoherence, there's something, and now we're refining the system. The connection is also an evolution of focusing on group coherence, make unconscious conscious so that we can all have real authentic connection with depths.
Yeah.
And also just like the process of like we used to, sharing the modality like directly in a traditional teaching and teacher-student model. And then we realized, the best learning experience is, through playing, through experiencing, through teaching each other. So we changed how we present the modality that we already know is working. Now we are, woven into the interaction and woven into the experience rather than and just kind of teaching you of something that it's working. I think that's how slowly and surely more and more magic of transformation and stories that happens more and more. Yeah, and I feel deeply inspired with what I saw is possible every month.
Yeah, I mean, the actual mushroom ceremony in the middle of it, but it was just held by the whole experience. So there wasn't like, okay, now we're going to do mushrooms. Now it's done. It's like, we're in this experience and now there's the mushroom night, but then it's not over. I mean, here we are. And
you were sharing, about the medicalized ketamine field. You go in, you get an injection, you get an Uber home, right? And I think most people don't understand what is psychedelic therapy, that it's very different than sitting on a couch talking to somebody that looks like Freud, right? This is, psychedelic therapy is usually in a space where the individual has their own space to process and the therapist or the facilitator is just there to hold them. But even those that do know or do go to some sort of facilitated mushroom or ayahuasca or psychedelic experience, the vast majority of it is you show up, maybe it's at an Airbnb or something, and you shake hands with the group that's around you, and then an hour or two later, you're all tripping together.
And maybe you do some artificial surface connection that is forced. Maybe you do some kind of talk around choosing love and gratitude that actually facilitates spiritual bypassing, that too.
That's a whole nother conversation. But, what we were sharing is like such a core ingredient of how efficacious, how safe a psychedelic experience can be, right? And conversely, like if one doesn't feel safe, aka they don't have the proper set and setting, the psychedelic experience can be re-traumatizing or traumatizing, right? So yeah, you shared that you didn't come with much expectation, but there's no way you could have known like the whole wraparound of the. I was just wondering if you can speak to like our original, like the beginning of this conversation, all these years of techniques and whatnot, and then ultimately discovering there's something underneath the techniques that is so fundamentally important. Like what you experienced here. Yeah,
it is interesting because it feels like I was just literally going around the world grabbing techniques and collecting and having this gigantic, 50-year toolbox. I mean, I started doing self-hypnosis when I was 12, so more than 50 years.
Wow.
Out-of-body experiences when I was 16. I mean, just things were always happening and I was interested. And it got to be quite a toolbox. There was a while where I was teaching and sharing and collecting more, but got to the point where I don't even have time to use all these tools and they all work, but how do we actually, I don't even use what I already know. And I share things with people and see them not use it either. We all got our tapping apps on our phones, and to actually encourage people to use it is the challenge. So coming here, being with people who not only have an understanding of a lot of these different techniques and thinking it through to what are the principles underneath the forms and how do we use the tools, not just maybe in an office where somebody comes in, gets a little tune-up and they take off, but in a space and in a community that's like the location, people come together here, but it's keeps going out into the world. To me, that's a model for how I want to live. And we need a lot more of that. And there's different, I mean, nobody's going to have exactly the same flavor as like the two of you personally. There is a model here, and you've created a model, and you've been consciously working on that. And I'm excited about, well, where could that go? You're going to do it in your unique way. Somebody else, with or without a partner, could do it in a different way. But when we talk about safety, sure, there's physical safety and just general responsibility. And then there's, you can say, emotional safety. But what does it take for people who haven't felt safe and had reasons to not feel safe to really feel safe? And it's not just like, okay, you're safe here. Oh, here, sign this thing that says you won't sue us, but you're safe here. And that's kind of standard. We follow this ethical code, right? Okay, you can do worse than that, but people aren't really going to feel safe until they test it. And that's what happened, with this group. You could see a lot of people, not consciously, I'm going to test this, but even, like a man who was just like, oh, I'm crying. And you can just like, yep, men don't cry. Something's wrong and I'm crying. And then by the end, he was so much more alive and able to cry, and he's a man. And that kind of like where people bring parts of ourselves or ways of being that we haven't accepted, that haven't been accepted, and we haven't accepted, and we haven't felt were acceptable, and bring them here and are just met with nothing but acceptance and encouragement and really love by you and by the group, that has a message of just like a little bit more like, oh, maybe it is safe. Well, let's try a little bit more. Ooh, that worked too. Maybe it is safe, right? What else could maybe we'll try. Ooh, this doesn't feel, but that was okay too, right? So it is a process. It's not going to be just like, oh, now I'm enlightened. And, it's a process of like healing and lightening up, whether we call it enlightenment or like some ultimate permanent thing. Not that can't exist, but I don't think that's really what we're doing now. But that sense of safety, like Tim Freak saying, like the heart is assured of safety, opens naturally. But it's not all a one. I mean, well, sometimes, especially with psychedelics, maybe it can feel like something just like bursts open. But what's really sustainable is, oh, maybe we can drop that, or maybe this is okay, or I can try this way on. It's like, wow, that's okay. Or I can show up with my fingernails and it's no big deal and it's kind of fun. And you can't fake it. It's like actually having a safe space. It has to be real. You can't just say like, hey, everybody, this is a safe space to be yourself. Maybe after people have experienced it, somebody might just say like, this is really a safe space we can just be ourselves. And people have already experienced it, right?
And also, like, I imagine when you say you come into us, you have your crab detector, like, people enter with a different sense of ability to create inner safety. Like, for people like us, I can go to a container, even if it doesn't work well, I can make sure myself doesn't get harmed. And there's the safety. But most people, they don't have that awareness nor ability. And most people go to an unsafe container. They don't even know they are not feeling safe. And because it's unsafe, it's just like you would not tell your bully that you're not, like, I'm being bullied. That's not okay. You don't feel safe from someone. You wouldn't be able to tell them. And what I witnessed here again and again is like people feel they don't know if they are safe. They experiencing challenge emotions. They are saying like, I don't want to do this, because that's how I know that they are actually feeling safe enough to communicate problems so that we can work together.
Yeah.
And most people go to an unsafe container, feel impacted, don't even know what is causing that.
Well, because maybe we're used to it, right? I mean, again, I'm finally realizing some of these things this weekend with feeling so safe here. I've just looked at how I've been under some kind of threat and attack most of my life. Not in every situation, but growing up and in family situations and in work situations. And we think it's just kind of normal. Like, well, I work in corporate America. How safe is that, right? It's physically safe. You get a paycheck. It might look safe, but are you safe to just be yourself? Or are you only safe as long as you fit into something that's, certain things are clearly defined and a lot of things are just assumed or in the mix?
Yeah, it's like, are you safe to find the feeling of I am me?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? To feel that, to really feel that.
Yeah.
We're kind of starting to wrap up this podcast, and what I'd like to, first I remember on the hike that we just did, you shared something that out of hundreds of experiences, you had some reflection ceremony.
Yeah, just a summary of this experience. My first psychedelic experience was 52 years ago. It's been going on for a while. All different contexts and some very beautiful experiences. But out of, over 300 psychedelic experiences over 50 years, I've never been fully supported or seen such a caring, loving container as this. And then in addition to the heart, then there's just all the skillful means and the techniques and the community. So I haven't found anything like this. So thank you. Thank you. And I want to see more.
And maybe just one final question, hearkening all the way back to the very beginning, in this role that you are stepping into more and more as an elder, what words of wisdom do you have for people seeking a pathway to feel greater spirituality, to feel greater connection, to feel path towards enlightenment?
Yeah, well, the older I get, the less I give advice. If people really ask, usually I'll just say, well, what do you think? But since you asked, if I could just say, look, beautiful people of whatever age, it's okay to be you. If you don't do it, who will? And you've been told so many other things, but it's really, you're beautiful and it's okay to be just as you are.
Imagine if I grew up every day, my mom told that. I was so different.
Yeah. Well, we can start doing that. And you are doing that. You've had a lot of that mother energy here. People really felt that. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kismet, Kate.
Yes.
I feel so grateful that we get to bask in your wisdom and your smile and your laughter, and all the way from that first meeting we had in the mud in Burning Man to now getting to sit together after having shared this really beautiful experience.
Yeah, when we talk about connection, where you look for quality connection is really special. When we meet someone who just have so much value aligned, and we see so many things, under such depths, and we can see eye to eye in so many ways and get called on the things that we love, and just feel we are all on this journey trying to find companion, and just had a companion like you, not only so warm and loving and appreciative, but also so inspiring and so generous in sharing your knowledge, your support. But the most important is that sense of how I find you and I feel less lonely on this path because we understand the same thing in each other.
Well, thank you. I mean, the older people need the younger people. The younger people need elders who are still really alive and relevant. Just don't overdo that wise elder stuff.
And is there any way that people can find you? Anything that you would like to share with the audience?
I have a website that is due for an overhaul, but if I put everything that I do out there, I don't know how I would handle the business because there are so many needs. KateHawke.com is my pre-pandemic website.
Well, hopefully if people want to find you, they can come find you here.
People, they can talk to you. They can, I'm findable. I'm in Arizona, northern Arizona. So thank you
so much for this time.
Yep.
I really love you. Really appreciate you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Modern Enlightenment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check out our website, subscribe to our online community, and check out our social media links in the show notes for more resources and updates.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to stay connected with our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore the intersection of modern science and spiritual wisdom. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep shining your light.